morning, folks. Baystate Yankee here. It's a rainy fall day. It's probably mid-60s. Tomorrow's supposed to be clear, but I'm stuck inside all day long and I didn't know what to do. I decided maybe it'd be a good day to bake. We had just recently picked some apples up at an orchard locally, and I got some nice Paula Reds and Molly Delicious here. I thought maybe I'd make an apple pie, but I went in the freezer this morning for something and I came across some frozen bananas. Now, every summer, well, all year, we buy bananas, and they usually come in looking like this, and we do a fair job at eating them, but there's like 7 of them here, and we'll each have a few, and we get down to the bottom ones, and they start turning black, and of course everybody has their own liking as far as how yellow or how black they like them. But when they get really black, you know, we don't usually eat them. They get soft, so we throw them in the freezer. We do this all year, and what we do is we take them out after they build up to a certain point. We take them out and we make banana bread. Well, I started poking around the freezer and I found that I had quite a few of these things. So I got them out thawing right now. They turn black when they freeze. And what happens when you open them is you get a very intense banana flavor. So your breads taste a lot better than they would if you used something like this. So I've got enough for like 3 batches. So I think that I'm going to start with an apple pie because that's my favorite. And then while the pie crust is chilling and we're waiting for the pie to come out of the oven, we'll work on the banana breads and get all the ingredients going for that. And then hopefully I can pop 3 of them in the oven at one time and then just be done with it. Now that's a lot of banana bread, so what we'll do is once it's cooled, we'll wrap it and freeze it. And then I won't have to do this again for a little while. On the pie, what I think I'll do today is I'll make my own crust. Sometimes I use the rolled up refrigerated crust. It works really well. I like it. It's very easy, but I want to show you how we make our crust. It comes out really flaky. It's a little bit involved, but a very good friend of mine many years ago who happened to be a Tupperware salesperson. And this lady showed me how to make a pie crust that's extremely flaky. And she gave me a couple important tips that I'll give to you. So, you know, if you're interested in making a crust, stick around. So, I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked the pie. And if not, I hope you like the banana bread. But either way, we're going to do it. Okay, here's how we make the crust. First of all, you need to relax. Maybe you haven't had good luck making crust. It's always intimidated you. It's not real hard. People have been doing it for hundreds of years, if not more, and you know, it's easy. It's just really easy. You take a bowl. I got this plastic bowl. It's a Tupperware. I'm not sure. Any brand, I guess, would do, as long as you have a lid that fits tightly on it. The lid has to fit tight. 2 cups of flour, all-purpose flour. You don't have to get some Asian wheat stuff and all kinds of those weird things. All-purpose flour. But you want to buy a decent one. I use Gold Medal. You can use whatever brand you want, but the cheaper flour that you get, the worse the results. So, you know, if you want to go with King Arthur, that's even better, but I just get gold medal flour, and it seems to work really well. Put that in the bowl. You're going to add some salt. Any brand, half a teaspoon. That's it, half a teaspoon. Sprinkle that in there. You're going to add baking powder. Any brand, half a teaspoon. Sprinkle that in there. Now you want to mix this stuff up. Otherwise you're going to get, you know, clumps of nothing here. So I just take a whisk and whisk it up. Now you're going to want to add, I use Crisco, shortening, whatever brand you want. I don't use the butter flavored one. I just go basic. Everything here is basic. This is 2/3 of a cup of Crisco. I put it in, I was told you could put the whole thing in at once. I find I get better results if I break it up a little and then swish it in the flour so it stays separated. In the final process, you'll see what I mean. All of this has to come together, and that's usually where people have a problem, getting it all to come together. So that was my issue. So I find that breaking it up into smaller batches like this, getting it in the flour, mixed up. The flour coats each piece, and then that helps the process later on. So I just get this in. It doesn't have to be pretty. You won't be graded. You won't even be asked questions, so. Okay, that's your basic crust. Now you want to add a little flavor. We're going to add butter. I have salted butter. I have 2 tablespoons right here. Now the Crisco and the butter are so important to the dough because it helps the layers of dough separate, and that's what makes it flaky. This is room temperature butter. I took it out and let it sit on the counter for about an hour. You don't ever want to microwave it to make it room temperature because it breaks down the viscosity of the butter and it just won't work as intended. And you can't get back to it. You can't refrigerate it and bring it back. Once you've microwaved it, you're all done. So you got to start all over. So now I've got these little odd clumps. I got the flour in there, the butter floating around in there. You can see it there. Water. And you got to add water to bring it together. Take ice water. Don't just take water out of the refrigerator. That's not ice water. Put ice cubes in a glass. Let it sit there for a few minutes. That water is nice and cold. If you have to make this cold, you're going to put a minimum of 6 tablespoons in there. 3, 4, 5, 6. I start with 6. You don't stir it or anything, and you don't touch it. You carefully set the lid in place and burp it. You guys know how to do this. Everybody from our era, burp Tupperware. Alright, now you got to do something really odd. You have to shake it, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, take the bowl, and I put my hands on it like this. I'm just holding the lid on to be sure it doesn't pop off. And I'm shaking it. And I can hear that stuff going back and forth, hitting the outside walls of the bowl. what you're doing is you're mixing it up. This is going to come together quickly as a dough. And this counts as your daily workout too. Now, some people do this. And you can hear it, it's coming together now. It's getting more solid. Now I'm going to open it and check it out, because I may have to add more water. And you can see it's coming together here. I'm going to add just a little bit more water. I'm going to put maybe 1 tablespoon of water in there. You don't want to overdo it because it gets too wet. I put the lid back on, seal it, perfect. Back at it. Yep, that'll do it. Hear that thud? That's your dough. There's your dough, right there. And you haven't touched it yet. The reason you don't want to touch it is because the warmth from your hands will melt the Crisco and or the butter, causing that to basically like microwaving it. We're going to put it in the fridge to chill, and that butter and the Crisco will solidify again. And then when we roll it out, we'll be able to get a nicer crust. First, I'm going to take my knife and scrape the inside. There's always a little bit of residue on the outside of the bowl. We're going to apply that right there. Okay, now we got to get this out of the bowl. First, I'm going to take a big spoon and press it to get it into some sort of uniform shape here, because I have to cut it in half. Well, almost in half. The bottom of the pie crust is larger than the top of the pie crust because it goes down over the sides. It's just simple to understand. So what I want to do is basically cut this, not exactly in half. I want a little bit more for the bottom, so I'm going to cut it just like this. Now I have 2 halves. The smaller one will be for the top, the larger one for the bottom. Now I take a sheet of clear plastic wrap, put it down here. Again, not touching the dough. I take it, plop it right down there. And for folks who have sensory issues, this is definitely a way to go. Not that I do, but you just don't want to touch the dough. Now I'm going to cover it up neatly. I'm going to leave a little slack in it because one time I want to just press it. That's it. Set it aside. That's the bottom crust. Take another sheet of clear plastic. This is the top. Kind of make a patty out of it. Wrap. Press. That's it. Now they go in the refrigerator for a couple hours. So we take them in here, and I put them on the glass. That'll chill it quicker. I'm putting the large one in front. That's the first one we'll use. That way I don't get confused when I take them out. So that's for the bottom crust. The first one will roll, and that's for the top crust right there. That's it. We'll leave them there like 2 hours at least. So here we are doing the banana bread, and I remembered after I set everything up that I don't have 3 or 4 loaf pans that are all consistent in size. You know, my fault, but in any case, I like using this one because the recipe I use makes a larger, kind of a larger loaf. So what I need to do is to purchase more of these. So when I do this, you know, a couple times a year, I can make them all the same size. So I'm using the recipe I'm using is just your basic banana bread. I'm not even putting nuts in it. I'm not going to go through all the process of doing it because if you don't know how to make banana bread, you're all done. Basically, the video is about using the frozen bananas, and when I go to put them in, I'll show you a clip on that. So basically, I'm going to do 1 loaf and then get that done and then knock them out one at a time. I'll be doing 3 loaves today. Okay, here's my frozen bananas. I'm putting 4 into this batch. I cut the stems off. Makes it easier to release them. And there's 2 ways to do this. You could just put this over the bowl and squeeze it in, but I wanted to show you how ripe they really are. When you open it up, look at that banana. They're beautiful, and the smell is just almost overpowering. That banana smell, which is what you want in a banana bread. You want something that's really got a lot of flavor. There you are. There's that pulp that you're after. Now I'll just mix this in with my batter. Pop it in the pan and away we go. There's the bananas in the mixer. And we're going to blend it up just to get it moist. You could do this by hand too. You don't really need the mixer. I'm lazy. But for many years before I had the mixer, I did it by hand. That's it. Now it goes in the pan. Okay, we're in the oven 1 hour, which is typical for banana bread. Now I'll clean up the mess and get ready to do the second and third batch. You don't want to mix your wet ingredients with your dry ingredients too soon. I've pre-mixed my dries right here, measured them out and everything, so I know I got the right quantities. But I won't mix the banana, the wet, with this dry ahead of time. It causes your baking soda to start working, and your bread won't rise when you finally get it in the oven 2 hours later. So you want to wait, but just have everything ready. So in the meantime, I'll clean up mess, and I'll compost those banana skins. You don't want to run them down the garbage disposal. Put them in your compost. All right. Okay, I'm going to prep the apples while the first banana bread is in the oven. And I have decided that I'm going to run the second and third loaves in these pans. It'll save time because I still have to bake the apple pie, and then we're going to need the oven for supper. So rather than disappoint people at the end of the day, this is what we're going to do. Back to the pie. I'm doing the perfect apple pie. I got this recipe from Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. Most likely everyone out there has this. It's available online. And I can see if I can get in there. It's called the Perfect Apple Pie. It's 6 to 8 tart apples, pared core, thinly sliced, basically 6 cups. 3/4 to a cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of flour, 1.5 to 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, dash of nutmeg, and then you want your pastry and a little bit of butter. So I got my sugar and my spice mixed here. I have to blend it. Now what I'm going to do is to pare the apples, core them, pare them, and get them in that bowl, and then dump this on top of it. I've got a tablespoon of lemon juice here. Some of the apples aren't quite as tart as I like them, so the lemon juice will help, beef that up a little bit. So let me get working on this. Okay, I got my apples cut. I'm going to put my lemon juice in now. Mix that up a little. Oh, I got a peel there. Some people like apple peels in their pie. I'm not a big fan of that. Kind of turns me off. I want apple, I don't want peel. Okay, now I got my stuff here. I'm going to mix that up a little. Pour that in there. The flour helps thicken that sauce that the sugar will react with the apples and put out some juice, and then the flour will help thicken that. You don't want to cut into a pie and have like water run out of it. That's not what a pie is about. You want that sweet juice, but you want it thick, like a gravy. So I've got this, I got them all covered here, like this. Now we're going to let this sit. First we got to taste one. I'm going to cover this and put it in the refrigerator and let it sit while I mess around with these banana breads. Okay, the moment you've been waiting for, the crust. Don't panic, we can do this. I'm starting with a deep dish, it's a Pyrex deep dish pie pan. I'm going to put that right here. I got my rolling pin. It's a French rolling pin. You can use a regular one. I like this one, and I have a name for it. I call it Le Pin. So Le Pin will be right here. I've got some flour for the surface, and I've got my bottom crust still wrapped up right out of the fridge. I take the flour, put it down here, open up my crust. Now remember, we haven't really touched this. Now I'm going to take the crust, and I put a little bit of flour on it, just to be sure. And then I'm going to, leaving the plastic on it, I'm going to fold it right over, just like that. Now we take a Le Pin, flour that, and let her get to work. And all I'm doing is carefully rolling it out. My goal is to get something large enough for that pie pan. And frequently I'll take the pie pan and gauge how far I've gone and what else I have to do. If you look carefully, you can see the little batches of butter. Those are perfect. If I had put the whole clump in there, you would only see one big clump. That's why we broke it up. I'm carefully moving it out. I don't want a thick piece of crust at the bottom of that pie. It's going to end up like a dough ball. I leave the plastic on as long as I can. It helps so that it doesn't stick to Le Pin. That's important. Le Pin doesn't like it, and neither do I. Now the reason I went with the French is because I can rock it back and forth and get the heavy areas moved out. Sometimes with the flat ones it's difficult. You get it a little bit tilted, you get thin on one side, thick on the other. So me and Le Pin go way back. I bought this in Vermont many years ago. A little place called Basketville. They were selling them real cheap. Just about there. I got a spot over here. I gotta move out. A little bit more on this side. Okay. Now put a little bit more flour on the pin. Now carefully remove the plastic. Look at that. One more gauge. Looks pretty good. I have a little spot on one side that might be lacking, but I can fill in. I'll show you what I do. Now because we put flour on the surface, it doesn't stick much. This is why we have wood counters. Watch my other video on how we clean and oil them. It's interesting. I'm carefully rolling it up right on the pin, and then I'm unrolling there you go. I got a little crack there, but you can fix that. Don't panic. You know, this isn't Martha Stewart stuff. It's not the end of the world. Everybody thinks that pie crust has to be perfectly round or forget about it. You know, that's not the real world. You get a good tasting pie, no one's going to really care what that crust looks like. Okay, there you go. Now we'll get the apples. I got my apples here all cut, chilled. They're going in. Look at that. See, no one even sees that crust down there. All that worrying for nothing. You can do this. You know, it's so much better than buying store-bought. You know, I see people at Thanksgiving and they're placing orders for like 5 or 10 pies. I'm like, what are you, crazy? Make it yourself. It's simple. And if you bought the crust that was already, you know, the pie crust that was already made, it'd be done by now. All right. You put that aside. Now we gotta start the second one. I'll put a little more flour here. And yeah, this is messy. We'll clean it. Not a problem. This is our top crust. A little flour. The pin. See, by chilling it, it makes that Crisco more thick. And if you don't want it runny, and the butter too, but the Crisco mainly because there's more of that in there. And it allows you to roll it out. When you roll it out, you're actually warming it up. The friction causes it to warm up. So if you have dough and Crisco and dough and Crisco and dough and Crisco, then what you end up with when you bake it, the Crisco melts and causes layers in that dough. And that's what you want. That's what gives you a nice flaky crust. The pin's working good today. Got a little bit more here. Now let me get the pie here just to see. I'm going to try to do a little more. Okay, all right, that's good. Okay, we take the pin and flour her one more time. We're going to pull the plastic off very carefully. We're going to remove this from the board. Very carefully sliding this slotted turner underneath the... Alright, rolling it up. Look at that, it just lifts right off the board. Perfect. We're going to set her right there and put this down. This is what the pie is going to be baking on. I could probably clean a little of this off first. This allows the heat to come up through the center and cook the bottom part of the pie, yet it still catches drips, because you will overflow a little bit. You don't want that in your oven. I'm going to center the pie right on there. I'm going to take my pastry brush, a little water, and go right around the edge. This is going to allow the top crust to stick to the bottom crust. We have a little gap here. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little gap with no crust. We're going to take a little extra piece here, brush it with some water, stick it right there. Just like that. That's how you fix a crust. Don't panic. No need for tears. We're all adults. Okay. So we got the pin here ready to go. She's got the crust. And we're going to roll that carefully. I don't like the looks of that. Okay. Right over the pie. There you go. Top crust is on. Now we just have to fix it. There's 100 ways to do this. Oh, one thing I forgot. I want to throw a little butter in there. I got some butter. Yeah. You don't have to do the butter. I like butter, so that's why I do it. That'll saturate in there. That's good. Pull the top back. Catch the other side with a little. Somewhere Paula Dean is smiling. And look at that boy using all that butter. That's right, Paula. Okay. Now, at first glance, you'd say, oh, that's the worst crust I've ever seen. Don't worry about it. We're going to fix this. I'm going to go right along and press it down the top crust to the bottom, and we wet it so it should stick. Now, there's probably 100 different ways you can finish the edge. Alright. As you probably know already, I'm not a perfectionist. I don't really care what the edge looks like. I'm not eating the pie for the edge. So I'm just making a traditional fork. Mash that fork down. A little flour there. But don't want to go. Not today. We're just making sure that the two crusts stick. That's all we're really doing. They have the fancy wheels that you can go around. I got one. I never get it out and use it. I never think about it till like right now. But you know, in the early colonies, they didn't have a fancy wheel. They didn't have Le Pin, you know. No, I'm just going to go along and do this. Cut off the excess. Not worry about it. A pie's a pie. Basically a crust with a filling. Now we're going to remove this stuff. This is a waste. Some people roll this out and they make fancy things and put it on the top and, you know. Nope, not today. Now you need to make some holes. In the high heat in the oven, this pie is going to steam. And that steam will lift that crust right up. And the crust will bake from the steam, and you'll get a pie with a crust that comes, I call them circus tents. They go way up like this. And there's nothing in it, it's hollow. And that's because whoever did the pie didn't put enough vents for the steam to come out. And since apples contain a lot of water, that's what I'm doing this today. I'm putting a hole right in the middle. That crust will cook, but it'll stay flat. Now, it's going to go in the oven here in about half an hour when the last of the banana breads come out. But in the meantime, it could sit. It won't hurt. I'm going to place this ring on it. And the ring stops the outer edge of the crust from burning. You know, you get a pie and it's like brown or black on the edge. No one wants to eat it, you know. You put this on and then about halfway, 3/4 of the way through baking, you take it off and let that edge cook. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to put this on the counter, clean up my mess, wait for the banana bread to come out, and then we'll pop this baby in the oven. This is when you wish you had it made. Okay, loaf number 2 and 3 are out. You can see how they overflowed from the pan. This is the reason why I wanted to get more different pans. This one here seems to be a normal loaf, but these kind of fill up. Well, the story behind this is that the recipe I use came from an aunt from a long time ago, and she used a pan called a Pullman pan, and that pan was probably this much longer. It was a very long and narrow pan, sometimes 15, even 18 inches you can get them. And she happened to have one, and someone had tweaked that recipe to fill that pan. So if we're only making one recipe of that, we usually split the dough between 2 pans, and we come out with a loaf that's like this. It's more of a flat top, and just for the 2 of us here, it seems to work. So we'd freeze one and then we eat the other one. But I really didn't want to mess with that today because we had so much to do. So that's kind of why we ended up doing it this way. These were supposed to take an hour to cook, and I ran almost an hour and 20 minutes because I had 2 at the same time in that oven. So that's just the way it goes. You have to adapt sometimes. So now we're on to the pie. So there she is in there cooking. Now we'll close this door and let her work. And the pie is out. There she is. Deep dish apple pie. It certainly has to cool down quite a bit before we eat it. But so for today we got that. And we got the 3 breads. Those all get frozen. This will be dessert for supper. So I want to thank you for watching. I certainly hope you subscribe, like, and comment if you'd like on the video. And until we see each other again, this Baystate Yankee and Le Pin. Say goodbye, Le Pin. Bye-bye.